Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 2, Episode 3 of Sweet Tooth. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, let's start off with Amy and Jeopard's side of things. They end up going to a place called Factory Town. I was wondering if the people he had a connection to were people he knew from his Last Man days. Maybe not. Once again, we're unclear how long Jeopard was with that Last Man, but these are some people that he knew. Like, it's like, yo, these are people I rode with a couple years back. They're pretty tough, this and that, and sadly they're dead. Apparently they died because the guy said Doomsday, and I was like, well, I was like, right, I forgot that's the name of the current strain that's floating around of the current variant of the sick that's floating around. So they most recently died. So it's like, well, that sucks. The people you were counting on to be your muscle, it's like, well, where else are you going to get muscle? Apparently there's people that Amy know because they're the ones who help kind of spread the word about the preserver. But I'm curious who these people are. I mean, they're willing to help her in that regard, so they're definitely on the right side of things. They support the hybrids and stuff. So, but I'm curious to find out who they are. We kind of find out a little. I mean, we already know Amy kind of closed herself off from humanity regardless, but now we find out even more so about why she did it. Like, it's like, oh, there's not that many humans around, but humans are the people she trusts less, because I think it was like two of her children that she said, like, there were two of her children she let out play outside of the walls of like the zoo and stuff or whatever, and she said all it took was one bad guy on one bad day and for her two of her children to disappear. And like, obviously she's like, I will not let that happen again. So that's why it was just always like we stay in the zoo. Of course, that's going to like give you some trauma, especially when you've been alone for so long. And these aren't just like, oh, these hybrid kids I'm taking. It's like, no, these are my kids. These are my children, each and every one of them. So it's like, you know, and I think at the same time, it hits Jeopard twice as hard because of, like, obviously what's happening with Gus, but also he's in a situation of, I know what it's like to have people disappear and never know whatever happened to him. In his case, Louisa and their son, so. And I thought that was interesting, too, when he was talking to that lady, Vanessa, who was like, no, you can't take the phone, because what if my wife tries to call me? The fact of the matter is, she promised, I told her, like, if we ever get separated, I'll be here, and that she would call me here. I can't have you, like, busying up the phone line. And Jeopard coming over and hugging her, because it's like, that's all too real. And he's like, yes, it's a lot. It takes a lot to be able to talk about that. And the fact is that I thought Jeopard was going to go down the Louisa and his son route, but it's like, I don't know if he's still even holding out hope on that anymore. It's all these years later, 10 years later, I don't know if, I think part of him probably has given up, and maybe there's a part of him that doesn't want to even try and hope. But at the very least, there's Gus. Gus is a hope I can hold on to, where I'm going to rescue that kid, you know. And maybe that's why he said something about Gus, but he knows what it's like waiting for a long time finding it, because all his time with the Last Man, all the terrible things he did, in his mind is probably like, what was it all for? I joined for the sake of Louisa and the baby. I'd never found any of them. In fact, she in particular would be disappointed in who I am and who I became for that purpose of trying to track them down, what I had to do to, you know, go down that route to find them, like what I had to sacrifice in myself in that moment. So I thought, but it was powerful, like him hugging her and saying, like, it's okay, like, I made a promise too. And the fact is, because he doesn't want to talk about anything that he went through, because, I mean, once again, it makes sense why Amy's trying to get him to talk about stuff. I'd actually completely forgot to talk about this last episode, about Amy opening up about, like, why, like, some of, like, the breathing techniques she helped Jeopard through. It's like, no, I didn't learn that from my, like, my time as a therapist. That might even been it. No, it was definitely episode 2. But it's like, yeah, I didn't learn that from my time as a therapist. I learned that from my mom, because her mom was in the military and suffered PTSD. And so I guess that ultimately led to her becoming a therapist. So it's like, she's a lot more willing to open up because she knows how important opening up is. Whereas, like, Jeopard keeps a lot of stuff buried, you know? So the big surprise of that storyline is, I mean, you know, with Jeopard and Amy, is the fact is that, God, Abbott ended up showing up which is like, right, he's not supposed to show up here. This is a neutral zone, but he probably picked this place on purpose because of that. And I love that he's like, where are we again? And his right-hand person had to be like, Factory Town, sir. He's like, Factory Town, you're so... It's like, all right, here you are spewing the BS. And then he brings out a little bit of the cure he had left that Adi had recently made, obviously, for Ani, but he gives it to a sick guy because he's putting on this performance, selling the world on this lie of, if you're looking for the cure, it's me. We can get back what we lost, obviously, with me in power, because I will be this world's savior. So, obviously, we as the audience know there is no permanent cure yet. He has Adi working on one, but he's a snake oil salesman. He's trying to buy himself enough time until a permanent cure is made. That's why he's rushing Adi, because this is all, I mean, he made it perfectly clear. He wants the cure so he can dictate who gets it and who doesn't, because he wants to rebuild society in his own image. I mean, it begs the question, like, is he even trying to rebuild the world that was before, but even better under his leadership? Or is he just spewing like, hey, I'm going to rebuild the world pre-crumble, but actually I'm not. I'm going to build a new society and I'm going to be one in charge. Because the reason why he's puffing out his chest, the reason why he's getting this all happening is because he's trying to get the attention of as he says, he's like, yeah, the 3 won't be able to ignore me. I thought it was 4, but maybe the guy that he met with is just kind of like an attaché of the 3. I thought he was kind of one of the big people himself, but it's like, I guess not. Well, maybe it's because like that guy ignored me, so I'm not gonna pay attention to him, but I'm gonna get to the 3. I don't know if it's because I was under the impression there was 4 plus home dude made 4 and him and the other 3, but I guess maybe it's only the main 3 and he's like an attaché, or maybe it's just because Abbott's like, yeah, the bridge is burned with that guy, I'm at least get the other 3's attention, because if I can't get his, at least I can get them on their majority on my side, then I win. But the moment that guy was cured, I was like, they're going to have to kill you. Because it's like, right, they're going to parade you around now, sure. But the moment they're like, yeah, take him away, like, you're going to take him somewhere and kill him. Because you can't have the world knowing that the cure is only temporary. Because you have to sell this lie. And you got to keep it going longer and longer until Adi actually is able to make a permanent cure. And also for Amy immediately realizing what this is all about, it's like, he's making that cure out of our children. And it's like the fact that she was able to kind of piece that together so quickly, but it's like, right, why he was so adamant about getting the preserve and why he has all the hybrids. She immediately pieced that all together. So now it's like they are in a race against time. It's like we can't let Abbott keep sacrificing our kids for a cure. So there's that. Luckily, they got a call at the end of the episode because the people Amy reached out to have reached back out. So that's definitely going to be interesting to kind of get introduced to who they are. And funny enough, that also ties into Ronnie's side of things back at the preserve. I kept going back and forth trying to understand what her reasoning was. Like, I figured, like, part of, like, one of my thoughts was like, oh, she has to, like, she now humanizes the hybrid, so she feels bad for them. But then it wasn't until like this episode that I was like, oh right, you would feel like the worst out of anyone, sadly, because yes, Adi's only killed 1 for your cure, but you have lived with the sick for a decade. How many hybrid children had to die for you? Because it's like, it's not like, oh, they didn't know what the secret sauce is. They only found out, obviously, last season what the secret sauce is, but she still had the detachment of, well, I've never been around hybrids. They're just kind of like, for her, she treated them as so different. Like, they're like a weird anomaly of like animal. Like, she didn't even try to humanize them in any shape or form, because they're creatures. That's all it is. But now she learns, like, wait, they're intelligent. They can talk. They are their own names, their own personalities. Now it feels a little like, wait, all the kids that had to die for my cures. It ain't like oh man, it's only it's like there are dozens that had to die for her cure, and now it's like really hitting her. That's why she wants to kind of be nice to the hybrids, why she feels this guilt over what happened. And it adds extra layers to it when Adi's like, I need to find this cure, because if I don't find the answers I'm looking for, that's going to be one more kid I'm going to have to take out that cannot. And I don't want to do what I did to Roy. I can't. I will have to, because I will have no choice, because it's about us being prisoners as well. because there's a whole conversation about karma. It's like, what karma did these kids deserve out of it? But then Adi's like, do you ever think about our karma, about kind of, I guess, like what they've done to survive too? So, but later on, Ronnie ends up visiting the hybrids, and it's like, I heard that some of you can talk. Can you? If you can and you're choosing not to, that's very smart of you. And ends up approaching Wendy and ended up giving her some, like, carrots, I believe. So trying to extend an olive branch, because I guess it's her way to kind of compensate for all the bad she's done. I think that's also why she's getting close to, because she's definitely spending a lot more time with Johnny. But I guess it's like, right, he kind of likes her. And so she's taking advantage of that. It's like, oh, we're playing Scrabble together. It's like, if I'm able to keep you close, I'm able to keep you on your good side. Be on your good side. You're going to give me a lot of leeway, and you might be my means of helping out just the tiniest bit, trying to alleviate some of the terror that the hybrids are going through. Plus, maybe in some shape or form, like, alleviate some of what Adi's going through. I mean, she's got her own. I mean, because there's a whole because Amy had that conversation with Jeopard about Survivor's Guild, about why are we, it is a legitimate thing of asking the question of why are we still here, and obviously, like, Ronnie has that even more so now. It's like, right, I didn't think about it beforehand. Like, even upon finding out about the secret sauce, I'm like, oh, that sucks. I feel bad for them, but whatever, once again, they're just creatures. Now that she knows more about the hybrids, that they are intelligent, that it isn't just like it's not the same thing as like putting down an animal, which obviously that's a whole conversation I'm sure Peter would have with you of like, no, it would be the same thing as putting down. That's a whole conversation. I think that's a point when you have these hybrids who are part animal, part human. It is that same conversation of like, yeah, if we were just straight up animals, you wouldn't feel bad about it, but you feel bad about it now because we're part human. But even then, it's like people hate you because you're part human, part animal. So it's like, it's a whole, I don't know if conundrum would be the word, but there's just so many layers to that, And speaking of the hybrids, sadly, they found out the truth about Roy this episode, because the guy who mainly looks after their warden, essentially the kennel guard, basically was like, yo, you better not be up to anything, because they call Dr. Singh the Butcher, which is like not the case, because how are you going to call him the Butcher like he's done this multiple times? He's done it one time, but that guy was just saying that, well, mainly because people probably did see what he did to Roy, so there's that. I mean, he is a doctor, so he would know how to handle that surgically. But it's also probably the thing of, I treat it as mostly like he's just trying to scare the kids, trying to keep them in line, because he also likes being able to torture them like that. But yeah, Wendy ended up telling them the truth. But now they think like, oh, Gus is a liar. Like Wendy said, like their mom told them never to lie. But now it's a situation of, sadly, because Gus lied about this one thing, they're probably never going to believe him about other things. It's like, oh, well, about this place in Wyoming and Yellowstone, you probably lied about that too, and your friend Bear. So it's turning most of the hybrids against him in that regard, even though like all he's ever done is try to help. Like he lied about Roy because he didn't want you guys scared. He also has done nothing but tell the truth since then, and all he's done is try to help, But we'll see where things kind of turn out from there. But I could definitely see them kind of like boxing him out, not believing him about a lot of stuff. Because it's like, how do we trust him anymore? So, especially with the whole Peter of it all, that might kind of complicate things. But we'll get to that. And we'll get right to that. Because Gus went off with Singh to check out Fort Smith. Because we got introduced to Jillian. She was like one of the main people behind this, because her whole thing was about, I mean, everyone's been searching forever for the whole means of eternal life and stuff like that, and we see like obviously like her doing creams and treatments to like reverse the aging process. I mean, everyone does something about it, but she as a scientist was really aiming for. She even references, what was it, there was like a Dr. James something. It's like, yeah, he had some kind of condition, and in 1911, he tried to go find that a cure. Which I'm like, isn't that the same dude whose journal Birdie found in episode 1? I think because if I remember correctly, the journal was like 1911. I think it was the same guy. So especially because they made the whole point. Once again, it has to be the same area because that they excavated the ice. They're like, yeah, the microbes we found and we've been trying them out. It's something that we've never seen exist anywhere else on Earth, but it's kind of trapped in this ice because it's something that was buried or lost beneath the Earth so long ago. So, but when they went to search for Project Midnight Sun, it's Adi, Gus, and the subtitles call him Hulk. I'm sure that's just like the nickname. Like, he probably doesn't have an official name, at least at this point in the story, so they just call him Hulk because he's the big dude. He's a big dude that Shepard and Amy ran into last episode. But yeah, it's almost interesting how, like, it almost tries... I mean, this episode in particular tries to humanize, like, the last man, and not just this capacity, but almost, like, another capacity, which we'll talk about that when we get to Becky's side of things. But when it comes to, like, this guy spinning, like, he doesn't like hybrids, but I guess because Gus is a little different, because he's like... Because Gus is mocking him when he's like, if you can talk, go ahead and talk. He's like, are we there? Yeah, he's like, God, that's creepy. But they end up stumbling. Well, like, Gus is having fun. I'm like, is that guy really just gonna let Gus do that? And he's just trying to, like, stop it, sit still. To be fair, regardless of it all, Gus is a kid, so it is a situation of like, kid just stopping. Like, there was almost a playfulness with it, where the guy's just looking at him, kind of nodding his head, like, oh, you're so annoying. But it's like, he kind of has no choice but to treat the kid okay, because it's like, if he does anything, Dr. Singh will have a problem, and if Dr. Singh has a problem, that can lead to Abbott having a problem, so it's mainly because you don't want to deal with Abbott in the long run. But yeah, they end up running into I was like, there's something there, but we just never, was like, well, what is here? And it's Peter, an alligator hybrid, who's definitely, I mean, as we've seen with some hybrids are more human than animal. They have a lot of animal characteristics, but they look more human, whereas others, like the elephant boy, like, looks a lot more elephant than human, but very humanoid. So we see that in Peter's case. Who knows how long he's been there, though? I wonder, has he been, like, surviving off of those chickens? Because, I mean, that place has been cleared, but the fact is it's been cleared must mean either Peter found this place and he's been chilling here for a while, probably, like, snacking on the chickens, or maybe it's a situation of he's been there the entire time. Well, he's a kid, because also, like, they're not supposed to live for long periods of time, aren't they? Like, isn't that well, because all the hybrids are only, like, kid ages, so we don't know. The fact is, Gus, because, like, that was the whole point of when they met. Gus is like, wait, have we met in the hybrids that old? Because they made it sound like hybrids probably died at a very young age, but it's also like they haven't been around long enough for us to really know, like, whether they would have, like, shortened lifespans or not. Because maybe they age faster than a normal human, but it seems like Gus ages at, like, a normal kid's rate anyway, you know? At least it's kind of implying that might be the case. But it wasn't just Peter that they ended up finding there. They ended up finding, like, a recording and some of Birdie's... Well, it was at least one tape and maybe some other journals and stuff, maybe, that revolved around Jillian and Birdie's, like, research and stuff about all of this. Because it was kind of... Jillian was kind of like the head person with all of this, but it was mainly Birdie's, like, project. And obviously she introduced Gus to everyone that was there, and Gus being able to kind of see his mom holding him, and it's like, you could tell it hurt him a little bit to hear her, like, say, like, obviously what his name is, what it represents, because his name is an anagram, but I think, like, hearing her talk about him and stuff like that, and holding him, it just kind of made him feel like, okay, like, because he also ran across some stuff of his dad's, because he saw Richard's name, he's like, Pubba, and I think it was, like, where, I mean, because we know, Richard was the custodian, so some of his stuff, like, one of them was probably, like, picked up one of his dad's tools to help back at the zoo. But he also made it clear to Singh, like, if anything happens to Peter, it's like, I won't help you anymore. So, but Singh is like, right, a deal is a deal. Problem is, that might be beyond your control, because Abbott might need a temporary cure. Because, yeah, he was able to kind of start it off in Factory Town. I was like, yeah, go spread the word to everyone, but he might have to go around to different places. I mean, we don't know if he's also been doing that in other places, too, and whether Factory Town might not have been his only stop. Like, Well, because I think he only had enough for one cure, so that might have been the only one. But he might push Singh to either, like, obviously find a permanent cure, but also give me a temporary cure enough so I can buy us more time by spreading the word more and more and more that, hey, I have the permacure type of situation. So we'll see. So Singh might not be able to keep up his end of the bargain like he wanted to, but we'll see. But obviously he's made it clear that he wants to pick up and finish where Birdie's research left off. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see where all that goes. But then finally we have Becky's side of things. She's still hanging around that kid, which we learn his name is Jordan. We end up finding out that he... I think he said he lost his mom during the first... No, his mom. I think he said, I lost my mom to the fourth variant or whatever they called it. Whereas obviously Becky lost her parents in the first wave. So all he has is his grandparents, because his dad was a last man and was killed by the animal army. And you see that, ugh, and Becky's like, I'm sorry. He's like, why? It's not your fault. It's like, I mean, that was my people. Because she obviously talked a little bit. It's like, yeah, I was with friends, but we had a falling out, so I ditched them. And I was with a father and his son, which I was like, oh, that's sweet. I mean, it's the easiest way to be like, yeah, I was with some dude and some kid that was with him. It's like, no, a father and his son. But it turns out that Jordan wants to join the last men, and it's like, wait, but they hunt down hybrids. And for him, it's very much like the same thing like Jeopard. Jeopard didn't join because he fully believed, but he also was like, he was so hopeless and lost at the time that he kind of like got sucked up into the lies of like, wait, we'll find an answer. We'll find answers, right? And also he was hoping to find his wife and his son. But it's like, in Jordan's case, it's like, yeah, I don't want to go against anyone, but being a last man meant that you have access to a lot of stuff that he could use to, get food and supplies and stuff to help out with his grandparents. So for him, it's worth it in that end, But then also it's like, oh, hey, look, we got a lot of good stuff. See, the last men, they're not that bad. It's like, but that's the whole point. Like, if you're able to make people think, first and foremost, that you have a cure, people are going to fall in line. And also, that's how you recruit people. Like, people who are desperate, who have nothing, like a good cult would do. You prey on that and it's like, hey, I'm here to help you, And that's why Jordan definitely has a more positive perspective on the last men than Becky does. Because she can see it firsthand of, like, how they're, like sweetening the deal by being like, oh yeah, here's some food and supplies. And it's like, oh my God, we've never gotten this much before. See, the last men are good. It's like, yeah, like, hey, we're here this is like one of the places you can go, you can belong and be a part of all of this. We're kind of helping preserve all that is humanity while also wiping out another part of this world, aka the hybrids. But the moment Becky heard from Jordan, who heard the rumors about the last men are going to be needing more people because they need someone to look after the zoo, and it's like, well, why would they need to go protect some zoo? It's like, well, that's where they're keeping all the hybrids. I mean, it was to preserve beforehand, and for Becky, that was all she needed, because it's like, right, I might be able to find Gus in them. Funny enough, she'd also end up running into her baby sister she lost all those years ago. Once again, they've all lost somebody, because Gus has lost his dad, but his mom's still out there in the world. Jeopard lost his wife and baby. They're somewhere out there in the world. I mean, obviously, all these years later, his son's going to be 10 years old, if he's still alive. And Becky's sister is Wendy, so there's definitely going to be... It's going to be interesting to see those interactions. I mean, it all depends on if she's able to get assigned there. And because they are referencing the animal kingdom more and more, I do feel like we will probably run into them. Maybe even Becky and Tiger will run into each other, and maybe Tiger will try and kill Jordan, and Becky had to be like, whoa, stop, don't do that. And it's like, wait, you're part of the animal kingdom that killed my dad? My dad wasn't the last man who hurt anyone. He was just doing it just for... But, regardless of it, they saw all last men as evil, because the majority of the last men are anti-hybrid, but not all of them believe in that. They're just doing what they needed to do to survive. So it's going to come out in some shape or form about Becky being Bear and being part of the animal kingdom, but the animal army. But we'll ultimately have to wait to see where all of this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.